Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Software Plaza podcast. I'm Twain Taylor, editor at Software Plaza, and I bring you a new conversation each week about what's happening in tech. And today I've got a new conversation as well. We're going to be talking to Anand Narasimhan, who is the CTO at SDocs. And their website is sdocs.com. Pretty simple. That's S, the letter, and docs.com. I'm going to read out their tagline on their website. It says, the experts in document automation, and goes on to say, thousands of global users trust SDocs to drive automation across their businesses. We combine our expertise with technology to deliver unparalleled efficiency through intuitive, scalable document automation and e-signature. Okay, so some key words I can already pick up, which is going to be playing a big part in our conversation, is document automation and e-signatures. So something that is especially relevant when you work in the larger enterprises and in the public space. And so that's going to be kind of our focus as well. And if you really enjoyed this conversation, I want to encourage you to go and check out all the other conversations we've been having like this over at our website or YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, wherever you listen or watch your podcasts. And with that, let's dive in. Anand, great to have you with us.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's learn a bit about you, Anand. Tell us about yourself. Give us an intro.
Yeah. So thanks for the opportunity, Twain. So I'll start with kind of early days. Grew up in India. Started out in a really small startup, which was doing e-learning before it was e-learning or learning management systems. Uh, Immigrated to the US in the early 2000s, and I've been in kind of like enterprise software for a long time, right? So
Hmm.
2007 was kind of probably my breakthrough moment. I joined Salesforce. Back then, it was a known quantity, but a very small company. It was kind of maybe a
Hmm.
mid-market company back then. I don't think anyone outside of North America even knew Salesforce back in 2007. Spent
Hmm.
15 years at
How
Salesforce.
old were they? How old were they back then,
They
2007?
were
When
maybe
did they
about
start?
8 years old.
Okay.
They went public in 1999, so they were probably about seven,
Okay.
8 years old.
Hmm.
Very well known in the Silicon Valley, but they were still kind of
Hmm.
like not hitting their stride. Just to put it in
Hmm.
reference, 2007, they were probably at about maybe 100 million quarter. Um,
Hmm.
they were not even $1 billion in revenue. Somewhere in the half a billion is probably where they were. So started there in
Wow.
2008, and then I spent and grew the
Hmm.
ranks there all the way through
Hmm.
2023. So I spent 15 years at Salesforce,
Wow.
and I had a first row seat for enterprise transformation, and
Hmm. Hmm.
probably even more stark was enterprise dysfunction, if I can call it that.
Okay.
How
What
largest of companies were so bad at their sales processes and whatnot. Go ahead.
what was your role there?
So I was playing the role of a technical architect. I started out as a technical consultant, and then when I finally left, I was kind of VP of technical architecture. So kind of consider me as like the chief architect. Have run like
Hmm.
massive digital transformation programs, and I'm
Hmm.
probably one of the few top 1% that know extremely a lot about Salesforce. But if you wake me up from
Hmm.
sleep and give me a problem in Salesforce, I'm probably going to get it right. That's how
All
well
right,
I
all
know the
right.
platform. But more importantly, all that enterprise customers, the enterprise background, the problems, the commonalities, the patterns, all of that was like 15 years of like constantly seeing this. So that
Hmm.
was a really good training ground for me, right? Like, and then STOX was founded by a former colleague and friend of mine,
Hmm.
and he saw the pattern, went out, did the entrepreneurial bug, grew it, and finally came to the point where they needed someone to come in and have that broad vision thinking, the innovative ideas of this, and truly take us to the next stage of SDocs' evolution. And that's when in
Hmm.
2023, after 15 years, that was a long time. Uh, Me being
Hmm.
in one company, I thought it was a good time. And I came on board
Hmm.
as their chief technology, chief product officer. I kind of own all of technology and products. at this point
Mm,
at SDocs, and really thought about like, you think about the space that we're in, like document automation, like it's the most commoditized thing. Putting signatures on a piece of digital paper in this day and age of AI is simple, but
mm,
everything around it and the problems
mm,
around it are not as simple. And I think that was kind of
mm,
the big attraction for me, is to say, yeah, it's DocuSign, the 6,000 pound, behemoth in the space. Everyone knows
mm.
DocuSign. You and I come
Yeah.
from the same country. We use Xerox as a verb. DocuSign's kind of
Mhm,
become a verb, right? Like, so we're competing against this
mhm,
behemoth. But then there are newer ways of thinking about it. And I think I
mhm.
saw the opportunity there. And that's what attracted me. And of course, working with my friend again, tremendously made this an exciting opportunity. So that's like a quick overview of where I
Nice.
started
Yeah,
and where
yeah.
I am right now.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm curious to know about just what you saw because like you ended, DocuSign was pretty well known, pretty big in the
Yeah,
space.
yeah, yeah.
And so you're up against some big competition. And I don't know, how was their Salesforce integration? And yeah, just where did you see a gap that they didn't fill that you
Yeah.
felt like you could build something better?
So a couple of unique things, right? So you read some of our website taglines, right? So one of the areas where we do uniquely really really well is this in this notion of regulated industries, right? So in the US or mostly Europe, Australia, regulated industries are basically three buckets. Number one is financial services. Number two is healthcare, which I'll include pharmaceuticals in there. And then number three is public sector, which is mostly government, federal government, or state and local, right? So those are like
Hmm.
really strong suites. And I would say that we are the number one document automation e-signature platform for regulated industries. We have a lot of federal agencies that actually use us. I'm not at liberty to share names because otherwise I will
Hmm.
probably be kicked out of the country involuntarily. So I don't want to do that.
Hmm.
But that's very important. And the reason that's important is if you've talked to financial services companies and all that, security, where does their data go? Where does that live? Where does it persist? God forbid there's a data leakage. All of this is super important to their chief security officers. Now, the
Hmm.
second part that is unique to Salesforce and SDocs is we're what is called as a native application. Are you familiar with that terminology? Native applications?
Kind of, yeah. But you could anyway explain it in just
So
like a
I'll
quick
kind
one or
of give
two.
you the best analogy, right? So I'm holding my phone here, but you've used the calculator app and you've also used TikTok or other apps, right? Big difference between the two apps is both of them are running on the phone. But the unique to the calculator is when it's doing some mathematical calculation, it's not sending your data to a server, doing the math and coming back.
Mm,
Whereas a
mm,
TikTok or like a Gemini or a Claude, it's probably sending it to a server. Now,
right.
sending it to a server means that application is not native uh, to your product. Like if that connection was to somehow be severed, that app would stop functioning. Similarly,
Hmm.
SDocs is a native app in the sense that we run completely within the boundaries of Salesforce. So we
All
actually
right.
do not
All right.
operate any server infrastructure outside Salesforce. Now, why is that important? Data does not leave the platform, not one bit. So we don't get to see our customers' data. We don't get to access it, nothing. The customer
Hmm.
runs it on Salesforce. They plop on top of it. SDocs,
Okay.
SDocs continues to work on top of Salesforce. This is why it's very
Hmm.
important for financial services healthcare because Salesforce over the last, whatever, 30 plus years, I think they're coming closer to their 30 years, has built this amazing trust layer, right? Like enterprises trust Salesforce because they know their data is not being used or going to have a data leakage and whatnot. We are sitting on
Hmm.
top of it gives them that added comfort that, yeah, you are not sending my data anywhere else. I don't need yet another threat vector. That's important.
Hmm.
And that's the big distinction between us and a DocuSign is that we're like native. So you talk about integration. We actually have no integration. We sit in Salesforce. There is no integration. It just works within Salesforce. And of
Hmm.
course, when I started, Salesforce was still kind of a small company. Siebel was the biggest back then, right? Siebel, Oracle CRM, and these were like large, like massive deployments. Salesforce was a nobody, and then here we are 20 years later. The Siebel's not even existent anymore, right?
Mhm.
DocuSign's a great product, right? They've been the leader in the e-signature space, but they have been for the last couple of decades. And I think the world in this AI, AI era, if I can call it that, is looking for something
Mhm.
that's more fast, quick, easier, and more importantly, I think some of these toolings all have a need for a heavy IT oriented, implementation. Takes months and years sometimes to kind of get that all done. I think what we're seeing is there is a massive appetite for business operations to come in and say, guys, I want to like sign up, turn on, and be able to automate things without like this massive implementation. That what AI has done is collapse
Mhm.
this time frame of gratification, right? Like time to
Yeah,
gratification or
yeah,
value or go to market.
to market.
Time to market, they
Mhm.
want that in days and weeks, not months and years. And I think that's where
Mhm.
we're very, very different. And that's why we have automation very core, is that automation piece is super important. And we make this super, super, super simple for us.
Mhm. Um, One follow-up question to ask about just the idea of being native Salesforce is, what about workflows that span Salesforce plus other systems? Does SDocs work there? How does it work? Tell us a bit more about that because yeah, I'm sure that within Salesforce seems like you guys have it all sorted. But then what I
Yeah.
mean, I'm sure that
That,
enterprises don't just function only on Salesforce.
yeah. So you kind of like great T2. We never talked about this, and this is not scripted, but 2 years ago, we saw Salesforce, and we've grown as Salesforce. They've been a great partner to us. We've been a great partner to them, right? But
Mm-hmm.
one of the other attractions for me taking on this job is the opportunity beyond Salesforce, right? So about two
Mm-hmm.
summers ago, we actually launched SDocs for HubSpot, starting to kind of like take off now because we see the same problems, the same, you know, the usual suspects showing there, and we have something unique to offer, and almost every one of them is automating that through HubSpot's workflows. And then last
Mm-hmm.
summer, we took an even bigger step and said, hey, we've got this, but what if we just became the horizontal platform for document automation, including
Mm-hmm.
e-signature for any platform? So today,
Mm-hmm.
we have this capability where if you are an API-enabled platform, say, for example, you're your consulting organization, you're 5 people, you use Google spreadsheets to manage your data, we can
Mm-hmm.
generate documents out of Google spreadsheets and send it out for signature and write back when it's complete. Or if you're this massive enterprise that uses NetSuite or SAP, we can do that too. So we've kind of
Mm-hmm.
built this horizontal platform,
Mm-hmm.
easy, intuitive, simple to use, but with the core aspect of automation, where we want to basically automate because you don't
Mm-hmm.
want people clicking buttons and sending things out. You want to say, if this happened, automatically do this. We're making it that simple, and we're targeting business operations people so that you don't need tech people to actually manage this platform at all. And then you don't need to
Mm-hmm.
integrate anything because it's all pre-integrated. We have a set of connectors. You choose the connector, and then boom, the rest of it is done.
Neat. It makes me kind of want to get into just you as a CTO, as a startup guy building a product. Because people listening to this, they're quite familiar with software systems and they build stuff and they manage their systems within their organizations. And so, hearing that side of you as well would be interesting. I'm just wondering, what did it take for you to go from Salesforce only to, this horizontal layer for document processing and automation that you mentioned? Kind of take us kind of, you can't go into all the details. I'm sure we'll be spending like
Yeah,
many,
yeah.
many episodes talking about this. Give us like the top level story of just what that meant for you to go on that journey from Salesforce centric to horizontal layer across different applications.
Yeah, I've shared this in another podcast, but I'm gonna like repeat it because it's very important and kind of drives me. I kind of it's probably 3 P's or 4 P's. I forget how many P's I came
Mm-hmm.
up with, but it's that, right? So
Mm-hmm.
my time at Salesforce was kind of like the learning grounds, right? It was always a problem, and then there was a project, right? I would go from project to project, And then as I
Mm-hmm.
got more mature and experienced, it went to a program. And then, a typical consultant, right? Any tech guy is probably taking a problem, going from project to project or a very large program. And then there's a fork in the road, right? You can continue to be, go from one program to another program to another, and program in the sense of like a digital program, right? So
Mm-hmm.
you solve the same problem over and over and over and over again, right? I am wired in a way where I saw the pattern. So you've already got like four P's in there, right? And there's one more P coming. So you've got problem, projects, program, and pattern.
Mm-hmm.
And I started to see one of my superpowers is like being able to see this repeatable pattern, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
our founder, Dan, he saw that pattern with document automation, went out, started SDocs. Here we are, right? And that I
Mm-hmm.
think is what trained me for, when I joined SDocs, and that's what continues to drive me forward is what is that pattern, right? And those patterns
Mm-hmm.
become products. And I think that transition, like it's somewhat binary. You're either a products person or a program projects person. Once you get
Mm-hmm.
into that pattern person, the pattern to product starts to naturally occur. And as I've gotten into SDocs and talk to customers, the lens that I always have and what I'm listening for is what is the pattern? How do I think about this from a product perspective that makes it simple? Hopefully that
Mm-hmm.
helps.
Yeah, yeah. But kind of get a little bit into like the technical kind of overview of like what that meant for your product, kind of some of the capabilities you needed to build, kind of the
Right.
design
That's
thinking,
good.
some of the trade-offs you had to make. Any comments on
Yeah.
those lines?
Yeah. So this was a ground up built product, right? So what we built for HubSpot and then now what we're calling SDocs platform was a
Mm-hmm.
ground up built product. It didn't exist 2 years ago, right? We were
Mm-hmm.
like, and so one, we had to really think about which market to go first for, right? Like, is it HubSpot? Is it ServiceNow? Right? There's so many of these markets. Is it Zoho, which is based in Chennai? Um, but we needed to build a product, and one of the things we thought ahead is like, can we build it not locking ourselves into a particular ecosystem, but build it more generically, right? So
Mm-hmm.
around that same time, we also heard from our customers about the need for more intuitive, easy to use experiences. This is about three and a
Mm-hmm.
half years ago, before the AI
Mm-hmm.
wave. And I think we combined these two and started to say, what if we built a new experience, but we targeted a smaller ecosystem like HubSpot, where we're
Mm-hmm.
relatively new. So from a
Mm-hmm.
technical standpoint, we built up everything ground up, the user experience, the infrastructure, the servers, the
Mm-hmm.
architecture, all of that was built ground up. Now,
Mm-hmm.
once we built that and we started to see some good positive momentum there, we said,
Mm-hmm.
well, the only thing different between a document that's coming out of HubSpot and SAP is where the data is coming from. What if we added
Right.
that layer in between? And that was kind of like, again, out of customer experiences, I said, okay, well, if we build this, what does this mean for security? Where do I store some of these tokens? How do we do
Mm-hmm.
this in a safe way so that we set ourselves for to being enterprise friendly, so that they
Mm-hmm.
know, we're taking this seriously, right? So that was one thing. Compliance is the other part, right? How do we get more compliance certification? SOC 2, how do we become SOC 2 type 2 compliant? That was a big part of our journey too, is to
Mm-hmm.
up level our security because, when you don't have the basic compliance, most enterprises are not even going to bother talking to
Yeah.
you, right? So I can go more in detail too.
That's fascinating. I found the HubSpot project idea quite interesting because kind of startup within startup, and
Exactly.
how you just you try new things and you might have been successful in the past with one thing, but then you
Yep.
don't stop there. You want to figure out other ways you can create something new, regain even more momentum in a new space.
Exactly.
And it seems like that's really paid off for you because now you've gone beyond HubSpot with that project, and now you're looking
Correct.
at just a horizontal layer, like you mentioned. Yeah, really fascinating. Um, yeah, I wanted to just segue from there to talk a bit about the market and how you've navigated. It's been a
Yep.
few years now. I don't know when was SDocs launched? When was it founded?
SDocs started in, I want to say like early 2013, 2014. So we've been
Yeah.
in business for about roughly 10 plus years.
Nice. Okay. Yeah. And so very different market back then,
Yeah,
in a lot of ways. But today, so much is changing, especially given AI and all of that.
correct.
Tell us, kind of bring us up to speed because we kind of got your story, in terms of the origins, in terms of the innovation with the HubSpot project, and just your vision now of having this horizontal layer. Talk to us about, today where you're at and a bit more about this horizontal layer, what this means, especially in an AI era.
Yeah, yeah. So we'll talk about the horizontal layer. I think I go back to um, with AI, why this has caught everyone by surprise is I think
Hmm.
everyone is meaningfully realizing how more productive they can be, right?
Mm.
Everyone uses AI as artificial intelligence. I use the term augmented intelligence because
Okay.
it's not replacing you, it's augmenting what you do. And it's augmenting
Hmm.
you in a way where you become that much more productive and you're focused on higher value tasks. Um,
Hmm.
Maybe
Hmm.
a different way of saying is it's probably amplified intelligence because it's
Right.
taking your intelligence, it's taking the hive mind, which is all the intelligence of your coworkers,
Hmm.
amplifying that for your own results as well as their results, right? Um,
Hmm.
so the core to AI and what I believe extremely strongly is this notion of how are you making enterprises, teams, individual employees productive, right?
Hmm.
Now, there's a lot of confusion because if we wanted to go to the moon, we just don't wake up and say, I'm going to go to the moon, right? There is a cycle around it. And what I'm seeing with AI, if I can draw that analogy, is or maybe even a simpler analogy is, you know, babies don't just start and walk. Uh, they don't just start going and riding a bicycle with no training wheels like that. They go
Hmm.
through the motions, and you can't jump steps to get to what you want.
Right.
And what I'm seeing a lot of technology leaders do is like AI is this magic wand. Hey, we had a lot of paper-based business. Well,
Mm.
wave the magic wand. Let's go to AI. Let's go to AI. And they skip a massive step, which is automation.
Right.
Um,
Okay. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, we did a big survey around this late last year. 69% of large enterprises still use manual processes, right? Think about if you want to generate a contract, they're not automating it.
Hmm.
They're going to a SharePoint site or a Google Drive and then downloading it, find and replacing. And imagine the amount of errors, right? And we've even put a price tag to the cost of compliance, about
Hmm.
$94,000 for every mistake you
Wow.
make for a bad document, right? Whether it's incorrect data,
Hmm.
wrong document, et cetera, et cetera. So, so the reason this is relevant is everyone wants to go AI, and I think the part that everyone skips is the automation piece. In fact, almost
Hmm.
I, I won't put a percent to it, but everyone says like, yeah, we've got AI. What they really needed was automation, which is why our biggest strength is the fact that we actually try to automate everything. Now,
Hmm.
like, how does AI and automation come together, right? So, for example, one of the areas that we're thinking about is this notion of document intelligence. Um, again, in this day and age, anyone can go white code something that says, here's a PDF, ask it a bunch of questions and make it like an interactive session. I can do that in the next 2 hours. I can do that live on this call if I needed to. That's how powerful coding agents have gotten. But is that what you really want to solve? What's the value? What is the higher value that it's adding? So we had an immigration company that's using us for in our HubSpot side. Being an immigration company, they file like petitions and whatnot as part of the USCIS. They get a lot of resumes as part of that petition process where they have to fill in like what's your highest level of education, where are you located, what's your work experience. There's like 10 questions that are embedded in unstructured data.
Hmm.
Think about the world where if I can send that in to an inbox, or if it can seamlessly say, as soon as this file is uploaded in HubSpot, go extract out these details, ask these questions, take unstructured data into structured data, push it back into HubSpot. Imagine they were doing this 10 times a day for about a couple of hours. Just the cost savings in that. So that is the big amplifier. is you take AI, which is now really good at extracting data, amplify that with this automation piece, right? Similar example, we had a healthcare customer that said, we receive birth certificates, we receive marriage certificates, and we have to update those life events in our systems. Today, they spend about 4 hours doing this every day. Think about the automation, right? So this is our core tenet to AI in our world, is we don't want to wrap ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, and say, oh, we've got AI. I think there's a lot of people doing that. They add an AI to their product and like, we've got AI.
Yeah.
We want to do something that's actually going to hit a problem that is supercharging effectiveness and productivity for our users. And we're working towards a few things around that front. Still TBD because it's still not announced, but we're working on a lot of experiments around that. And then the piece around AI that I will complete with is AI has become the UI. I don't know if I'm assuming you use a lot of AI. Previously, people used to go to the web and do Google searches. Now, everyone's opening an LLM, whether it's Claude Desktop, GPT Desktop, Gemini Desktop, and that's where they start. Yeah. And what's happened is that that's transformed into the enterprise where, Slack announced this a few weeks ago. Salesforce announced this headless 360. So rather than you going to Salesforce to ask the question, Salesforce is coming to an LLM of choice, and it's answering the same question for you. And there's a big advantage to that, right? Because now this LLM has connections to Salesforce, but it also has connections to a NetSuite or an SAP or a Google spreadsheet. And it can stitch all this together to give you that cohesive answer. So we're actually, last week at Salesforce had a big conference at New York, and we demonstrated how you can do this still native SDocs generation all inside Claude. You don't even have to go into Salesforce. You can generate a document, send it out for signature right from Claude. In fact, I'll demo this when we get to the demo part.
Right. All right. Yeah. Sounds interesting. I want to ask also a bit about just following up on what you just said about I totally see that it makes sense that people should first automate and then move to the agentic layer and do stuff with LLMs. But LLMs are just so attractive when you think of, it's easy.
Yeah.
Like automation feels hard these days when you think of how easy it is to just prompt stuff and like maybe build a little app that does something similar.
Yeah.
So given that, right, given it's LLMs make it so easy and attractive, why should or what are the pitfalls of going with that option than automation? I'm trying to kind of make it a little more relatable and more real so that we really get it, because it feels like it's the right thing, but then it's, it doesn't feel like the right thing, or it feels like sometimes the hard thing. But anyway, just explain a bit more about.
I'll probably draw an analogy. So I love giving analogies because it's easier, right? So imagine you're in the business of baking cookies, right? And you're the person that's building those cookies. You know it, or you can read a cookbook and build it, right? And say there's 10 of you in the kitchen. Everyone's like, I got it. Imagine the nature. All of those cookies will be delicious, but everything will have different forms. It'll have sprinkles. It'll have vanilla. It'll have chocolate. It'll have strawberry. It'll be different varying forms. Now, for cookies, that's great because everyone wants a variety in food. But in the world of documents, especially in regulated industries, variety is actually the opposite of what everyone wants. They want consistency, they want predictability, and they want auditability. So sure, LLMs are great at going and doing documents for you. But if you ask it 3 times, you're going to get 3 different variations of the same thing. This is the difference between using AI just as a replacement for documents to automation supercharged by AI, right? So that automation gives you consistency. It gives you predictability. And these are things you need because I go back to that metric. $94,000 is the average cost for a compliance mistake. Bad data, inconsistent stuff, missing stuff. Like a more realistic example, imagine you're doing business with Singapore. Singapore has a data privacy. In fact, India probably also has now a data privacy law around that. Data for its citizens cannot leave the premise of India. Now, imagine you're creating a contract. Sure, LLMs can go create contracts for you, but does it know that, hey, for India, I need to include these 3 additional paragraphs, right?
Mm,
That's
yeah.
where consistency and automation trump any kind of
Mhm.
AI that can make it easy. That's why
Right.
you need to invest in automation first.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I think that really drives the point home there.
And
Great,
maybe
great
one more
example.
thing. One more thing is auditability, right? With LLMs, you can have hundreds of these people doing this, and like, what's the auditability? Who created it? When was it sent? Who was it sent to? Who opened it? When was it signed? What was the data that was written back? What did they enter in that data, right? Like that detailed audit trail is not something an LLM is going to have. A chat history in audit trail, good luck with defending that in court.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow, that nails it. Yeah, totally clear up on that. Just wanted, before we get into the demo, just wanted you to just talk a bit about, you mentioned you've got some things in the oven, you've got new features that you're going to be releasing
Sure.
soon. Come back and tell us about it when it launches. But you recently launched some new features as well. Uh,
Correct.
Mention those, tell us a bit about what they do and why now, and then from there we'll get into the demo.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that we launched over the summer, we were in DC, and like I said, public sector is a big part of our business. And because we're native for 100% on Salesforce, they love us. But I'm going to, hopefully this card shows up. So this is what's called as a CAC
Yeah.
card, or a common access card,
Okay.
I think is what it's called. So it's a CAC, and PIV stands for personal identifiable verifiable card. I think I forget the exact terminology. So
Mhm.
most federal agencies in the US, and I think in it, this kind of is the case with most highly regulated industries. You have this notion of a smart card, much like a credit card. It
Mhm.
has a chip on it, has your identity,
Mhm.
right? Now, when you
Mhm.
send out something for signature, right? If you send it via email, anyone can hack your email, right? In this day and age, I think people can hack people's emails in less than 5 minutes, right? Probably doesn't even take that much. Okay, well,
Mhm.
that SMS to text-based verification. Anyone can hack your phone. In fact, with facial recognition, like the face thing that they do on the iPhones, if you're sleeping, someone can put a phone on your face and unlock your phone, right? You can do that today, right? Like, so great
Mhm.
steps, but it doesn't make you secure. So identity verification is a big part of what we launched. And for the
Okay.
federal agencies in the US, they want to make sure that the person that's signing verifies who they are through this CAC process. So they actually put it into a slot. They have to type in a PIN that only they know. And after that PIN is verified, is only the signature process completes. Um,
Mhm.
this is not new, but this has existed in the past. But the way this has been supported is through, like, you need to install like a piece of software on your desktop. And we're in like an AI cloud first era. I'm not going to have this install something and do this on my desktop. So we came up with a partnership through Okta, as well as other identity providers, where we can now actually do CAC verified e-signatures, still fully native to the platform. Um, and then we have verified, we have a clear audit trail that says, Twain used his CAC card with this serial number to complete the signature. And that becomes
Mhm.
a defensible thing when you go to court, if you ever have to go to court. So that was the
Mhm.
big announcement that we did, was identity verification.
Mhm. Does it like how does the authentication work? Is there like a hardware device involved for the card? Is it all digital?
There is, yeah. So the most federal agencies have the hardware and the cards, because they're like, it takes about 2 years to issue a card, because it's like a pretty rigorous process. So they already have the infrastructure for the cards. I believe they also have like what is called as a mobile CAC for the phone. So you can actually
Mhm.
punch in or have a way to tap your card on your phone and verify, right? So that infrastructure existed. But the
Mhm.
key ingredient to this was standards based. We worked with Okta, OpenID based protocol, and at the end of the day, you're verifying identity. We looked at identity providers like Okta and the likes. All of them supported the standards based authentication. So we combined these two together, and it was a kind of a
Mhm.
win-win. So that's kind of like a little bit of the under the covers.
All right, neat. Demo time.
Yeah, totally. All right. Let
tour of the product.
me share my screen. Allow. Let's go demo. You can see my Claude desktop, right?
Yep.
All right, let me make it bigger. So the premise is, so imagine you're using Salesforce, and there's a person on the field. They want to generate like you're going and inspecting for an accident, and you want to generate a claim insurance letter, right? Again, I could go this in Salesforce. In fact, I'll probably open this in Salesforce in a second.
Before you run the
Yeah,
prompt,
go ahead.
just a question.
Yeah,
Behind the scenes, what is Claude connected to? How have you kind of set this up so that you
yeah,
can really quickly put in a short prompt and a lot of stuff is happening in the
absolutely.
back end?
Yeah, that's a great question. So what you're seeing now is Salesforce. So this is Salesforce. If you've not seen it before, this is kind of how Salesforce typically looks. This is what is called as a case record. It's called a ticket, a problem, a complaint, whatever you want to call it, right? And this is how SDocs manifests. As you can see here, I've got an insurance claims letter. I can click here, generate. I can do this manually. Click, click, click. 7 clicks later, I get what I need, right? Salesforce 3 weeks ago announced this thing called Headless 360. What they said is that they are basically a set of MCP servers that expose the standard capability of Salesforce, but they also allow what is called custom MCP servers. So MCP, for those that are listening, Model Context Protocol, it is kind of almost the API for AI, if I can call it that. And Salesforce just exposed that. So because we were natively built into Salesforce, for us to essentially enable a custom MCP for a customer, what you're about to see in Cloud took me all of an hour to essentially enable and configure, right? And that was because I was doing it the first time. In real life, it probably takes a couple of minutes. So what the underlying technology is MCP, and because Salesforce is enabling all those MCP servers, I enabled an MCP in Salesforce, and then I went to Cloud and said, "Here's the MCP endpoint. Use this." And then I created a skill in Cloud, again, very standard Cloud stuff to do, to say anytime you hear the words generate or things, use this skill and use Salesforce to do it. Of course, the first time I went through and authenticated myself in Salesforce, so identity is also established as part of that. I'm going to skip the authentication part for time. Does that make sense, Twain?
Yeah, sure thing. Yeah.
Okay. So now I can certainly go click here and do this, but I'm going to actually, this is the case number. So let me zoom in a bit if I can do this. So it's typically a case number. I can also have it be like, hey, generate a case for this Amy parking lot incident. So let me go ahead and do this. Now, what Claude is doing, and this is the power of AI, is it's probably detecting all the tools, and I've configured it, and you'll start to see that it actually determined that SDocs is going to do that. And this is the SDocs part. Again, key thing for data and security is all of the data still lives and does not leave the platform. So Claude is telling Salesforce, do you have a template? Do you have a record that matches this ID? Once it's done all that, it's going to say, okay, fire off and say, go generate the document. The generation itself still lives within Salesforce. It's usually takes a bit because Salesforce, again, being multi-tenant and all that, right? So that is the core part of this. Now I can come back here. If I refresh, and I also have another demo, which is also Cactus based. We'll come back to the Claude piece in a second. So you'll notice that previously there was nothing here. Now I actually have the document, and I'm showing you both views just so that how real this is. I can preview this. This again is a very simple letter, and by now Claude should have completed. We'll come back to it. Now let's talk about the identity confirmation piece. I'm going to switch to a different demo to kind of show you while Claude is running, right? So again, here's a complaint letter. I want to generate a document. I'm generating the document, but I'm going to show the e-sign piece to this. Again, this is all desktop because this use case is very desktop centric. But now I can go and say, okay, let me go and e-sign. And one of the steps that it'll do is it'll actually prompt me to verify my identity in Okta, right? So now it prompted Okta. I've configured it to Okta. Now I have to complete the authentication. So let me complete that in a second. And then I've got a two-factor here. So that's like the third factor. Again, all of this is about, me and only me. Again, I need my passcode, my phone, all of that, right? And then once it completes, it's going to, continue the process and finish off, right? So let's see if Claude came back. My internet's been a little off. So let me try this one more time. Otherwise, we'll kind of do this over. But you get the idea here that, it's basically doing it all from the, and here's the signature interface. Again, this is very standard straightforward stuff in here. I've really not submitted it. I'll complete the signature here. And submit document, right? So now it's going through and submitting the process, and there's some backend data behind it. So hopefully that gives you a quick peek into the demo. Again, key takeaways are data security of the data being in Salesforce, calling it from any LLM that you want, and then working it through.
Yeah.
Any questions?
Really interesting. Yeah, I mean, this, and this that you just demoed, it's kind of actually initial, like these are the first steps in terms of integrating AI with all of these processes that have been existing, for decades. But yeah, it's exciting times. Where do you see this going? How do you see it evolving? What excites you when you think of like where all this could lead?
Yeah, exactly. So before I get there, so Claude finally caught up and it actually completed the document. It also noticed that it detected Amy Smith as the claimant, and of course I put in my email. But I can actually say it noticed that I have an e-signature. I can say, yeah, send this for e-signature. Right. And then now it's going to kick off again, all of this natively happening, right? So go back to this notion of, as you can see, I've got some internet issues here. We'll come back to it. But go back to this notion of automation efficiency before AI, right? What you're seeing is this notion of automation. What I've done is I've automated that process in Salesforce. And with the power of AI, I actually brought that to your LLM. And I think that is the core aspect of this. Now, what I've demonstrated here is mostly document generation and e-signature, but we're thinking beyond that to say a document is a document. What can you do with the document? Sometimes you want to extract data from a document. Sometimes you want to analyze a document. Say, you're working with a big contract that's coming. The customer's like, here's our standard vendor contract. And you don't know if there are things in there that you as an enterprise want to accept or not accept. So how do you risk and analyze that contract against a corporate standard that you have? For example, you say our standard is we cannot allow customers to terminate before giving us 60 days worth of notice. But maybe there's a large customer that says, you know what, guys,
I can't really
our
hear you
standard
right
is 50.
now.
Say that again.
Yeah, Anand. So you were talking about you were just showing us something here in Claude.
Yeah. So I think finally Claude caught up. But the point was, again, the core to this was not the fact that we were able to bring this into Claude. The more important part is that because SDocs was able to build that automation in Salesforce, we were able to quickly bring it into Claude, right? Again, automation first, AI supercharging that automation is the core message, right? Now, what I'm showing here, and again, this is a live link to an e-signature experience. So if I open it, it'll actually take it to our e-signature experience. I'll leave it there. But a document has many purposes, right? A document has data in it. Some people have like these old documents that people scan and send and whatnot. In other examples, what I call the document intelligence side, there are situations where a large customer, like let's say Airtel, sends a contract to you, and they've got all kinds of things in because they're a very large company, and you want to go look at it against your enterprise standard and say, hey, does this compare? How does what is in this customer sent contract compare against our standard of what we can accept?
Yeah.
Now, could an LLM do that? Sure. Do you want to send that to an LLM in the public domain? Probably not. But more importantly, again, go back to you can do this for one contract, you can do this for two contracts, you can do this for 5 contracts, for 10 contracts. But when you're a large enterprise, when there's all of these contracts that are happening every day, every minute, you need that automation step, right? So again, what we're thinking about AI is everything around the document domain, both generation and e-signature, but there's data extraction that we're thinking about. Again, we're thinking about how do we automate it? How do we make it dead simple so that a non-technical person should be able to set this up? And there's also this notion of document risk analysis. How do you scorecard something against some standards? You'd think it's easy, but this is why there's many teams that look at contracts and all. Now, we're not trying to be a contracts platform. What we're saying is that we're going to augment everything around documents so that we make the operations teams super efficient. And we're going to target the regulated industries because that's where inefficiencies are there. Does that give you a broad idea?
Yeah. I think that definitely builds on what you mentioned earlier about the need for automation first and then agentic.
Yeah.
Some closing thoughts as you wind down is that, all of this really means a lot for time savings because there's fewer steps involved for operations teams. And it also, so that means that, it makes things fast, but it also gives people also a better experience. The UX gets improved drastically, and by reducing steps, by just the interface that you work with that's familiar and that's easy to use, easy to follow up, put follow-up requests or customize. Which do you think people value the more? I mean, I'm sure both are important. Do you see people valuing speed more, or do you see them valuing easy interface, UX, that thing more?
So I think the best UI that people want is the one that they don't use. Because if I don't have to do it, if I don't have to use it, and it already happens, then it's one less thing for me to actually go and interface. So I go back to it, probably you might be bored by now, but that's what automation does to an enterprise, right? You don't have to think about it. It's compliant, it's repetitive, it is deterministic, it's predictable, all of that, right? And I don't need an interface for that. So just to put a proof point around this, right? Both on the Salesforce side and the HubSpot side. On the Salesforce side, we've got a customer called Florida Prepaid. They do college funds and what is called as a 529 in the US. Year-end, they send tax statements, right? They wanted a highly automated and scalable process. Now, if they had to have their customers, their employees have to do this manually, sure, they can do that. But with SDocs and Salesforce, they were able to generate, I think the number is about 1 million documents over a 24-hour period. So in terms of scale, that is about 1,400 documents a minute. Right? So intense scale. Like someone asks me about scale, I usually say, is 1,400 documents a minute okay? And they're like, okay. So think about the pure automation scale at that, right? The other one is the immigration law firm. And they had 6 paralegals spend about a few hours sending out these client letters, retainer agreement letters. 6 paralegals every day. Do the math, right? They were able to, on an average with SDocs for HubSpot, reduce and at least a couple of hours every day, at least, right? Just the cost savings in that. And then taking those paralegals' time and using it for what they truly studied, which is the legal side of this. Put them to those higher value tasks. That drives productivity, efficiency, and then you're able to satisfy and gain more clients, better trust, better loyalty, all of that, right? Usually automation ends up being a leading technology. The lagging indicators are your retention, your trust, your CSATs, your NPS, all of that. That's what changes it. And it takes a bit to get there. But once you start to realize, oh, we were able to accomplish a whole lot more with a lot less, And now you add AI on top of it, which is already amplifying everything. You've already amplified, like it's like cascading something that's already much bigger.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that definitely, is a great case for automation. And I'm glad you presented it that way, because I think it's necessary,
Yeah.
especially at a time when everyone is distracted and fascinated with AI. This can be a boring message, but I think the way you presented it is not that it's not about boring or exciting, but it's about what works, what is practical, what is safe, and what really scales fast.
Yeah.
And this is the answer. So I think you really made a great
Automation is
case.
boring. Automation is boring, but I'd rather deal with the boring stuff so that your human part can actually figure out and work with the exciting stuff so that the people
Mhm.
aren't doing boring stuff and getting bored of their jobs.
Yeah, yeah. And interestingly, that stat you mentioned earlier, where 67, I don't know, what's the exact
69%.
percent?
69% is
69%.
daily manual time.
Yeah, so there's still lots of room to automate, lots of room to grow.
Lots and lots.
And I think despite people pushing hard to go agentic, I think they're going to realize there are a lot of gaps still with automation, and they're going to come back. The pendulum is going to swing back every now and then.
Yeah.
And
My favorite tagline, Twain, is everyone talks about autonomous agents. Autonomous starts with automation.
mhm,
If you haven't
yeah.
automated, there's nothing you can do to get autonomous.
Mhm. Yeah, and some great examples that you mentioned, some analogies that you mentioned
Yeah.
about just, learning to walk before you run. Or, well,
Right.
yeah, it
Right.
happens in stages. That was quite insightful as well. Yeah, really, really engaging conversation, really insightful. Thanks for joining us today, Anand. It was a pleasure chatting with you.
Absolutely.
Anything you want to mention as a takeaway, someone who's interested in getting started? What's the first step they take? Where do they start?
I mean, with automation, again, like think about what you can do to automate things in your enterprise. Don't jump the AI bandwagon right away. There's lots of, as they call it in the US, snake oil salesmen that'll sell you
Mhm.
anything. Go to reflect back, look in the mirror and reflect back in all the processes. There's some amazing companies out there, us included,
Mhm.
that can come and help you. And then, hey, if you think about e-signature and you're thinking about DocuSign, now you know you have an alternative way to think about this that is faster, efficient, and a lot more scalable.
All right, all right. Yeah, that's a great elevator pitch. So yeah, you heard it, guys, from Anand. And so if you want to check out SDocs, go to their website, sdocs.com, see what they're up to and see how you can use them as you look to improve operations, especially if you're in the sectors that you mentioned earlier, the financial sector, healthcare, and the public sector.
Yep.
And do get in touch with Anand on LinkedIn if you want to continue the conversation with him directly. And tune in again on the next episode where we'll be talking on topics like this even more. Stay tuned, subscribe to wherever you're listening, and we'll see you on the next episode. Take care. Bye bye.